In today's show, it's a mailbag. Is Anfernee Simons a superstar? And what are the Blazers going to do this summer? Are they going to lean into their strengths, or are they going to try to fix their deficiencies? Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richman. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Why don't you make this show your first listen every single day? Make it a part of your daily routine because it's coming at you every single weekday. So make it your first listen every single day and then come back the next day and do it again. Today's show, it's a mailbag episode. We're going to answer listener-submitted questions all episode long. If you want to get involved in a future mailbag episode, here's the best ways to do it. The best practices have slightly changed because the behavior of your dear host has changed a little bit. Follow me on Twitter at Mike G. Rich, and on day of, I will send out a tweet soliciting your questions. I'll say, I'll give you like a 6 or 7 hour head start. Say, hey, need some mailbag questions at Mike G. Rich. You respond to that tweet. I will do my best to get you in the show, or I'll pick out the ones I like, quite frankly, and put them in the show. If you're not a Twitter person, or you're someone who doesn't tweet, or you just don't want to follow me and at the whims of when I decide to do mailbags, just email me. LockedOnBlazersPod@gmail.com. Quite frankly, that's the best way to get in touch with me always. If you want to ask me a longer question, if you want to reach out, if you want to just share some thoughts, LockedOnBlazersPod@gmail.com. Keep it civil and I'll respond and we can talk hoops. All right, those are 2 ways to do it. So, luckily, some of your fellow listeners have submitted questions, including the good Reverend Dr. Jess Beelman at Reverend Dr. Beals, Rev Dr. Beals on Twitter, who asks, I know that plan A is to build around and win with Damian Lillard. They have made that very clear. However, other than not using all of their possible offseason tools, what would be the signs that they are hedging for a post-Dame rebuild? I think plan A is to build around Dame. I think plan B is to build around Dame. And I think plan C is to build around Dame. If Damian Lillard is here, there's no hedging. Last year, basically a year ago, in last July, Damian Lillard was so unsettled. For the first time ever, he openly questioned his future with the Blazers in a public way that he had never done before. Then we went into the season with a whole new head coach. They fired the GM. And then in January, when things were going sideways, absolutely with Damian Lillard's blessing, they traded their good players for future flexibility. They traded C.J. McCollum, Dame's longtime running mates. Then in the All-Star break, they shut everyone down and intentionally lost on purpose for the final 23 games of the regular season. They were aggressive in this way, and you better believe everything they do, Damian Lillard is involved in. He had a say in the previous regime's decisions. But he didn't have, I believe now he has much more say. I believe him and his team have a much louder voice than they had under Neil Olshey. That doesn't mean that that Cronin doesn't get to make the moves. It just means that Dame knows about the moves, approves the moves, approves of the moves. He doesn't rubber stamp it. I'm not suggesting that, but they aren't doing things without Dame's blessing and Dame's understanding. And when they decided to shut the team down, Dame understood what that meant for the team's present and the team's future. When he decided to have surgery, he knew what that meant for the team's present and the team's future. When they traded C.J. McCollum, you better believe Damian Lillard signed off and was okay with, it's time to make that move. All of that said, Dame understood what the plan was, but Dame understands what his goals are, and his goals are to be good. And if he's here, they're going to try to be good with him, and there are not going to be half measures. I think it is much more likely that the Blazers, who owe a lottery-protected pick to the Chicago Bulls over the next, until 2028, at some point they're going to have to give it to them, will remove the protections off the pick. Just straight up give the Bulls a future draft pick, a next year's draft pick or whatever it might be, allowing them to trade other future firsts so they can take bigger swings, so they can sweeten a future trade, so they can chase someone with all that they have. That's much more likely. There aren't going to be half measures. I think it's like a 95% chance they trade the number 7 overall pick in the NBA draft. I think it's like a 5% chance that they draft a rookie. And that would be, to me, if they do draft a rookie, the very unlikely chance, in my eyes, that they do draft someone with number 7. It wouldn't be a sign that they were hedging, much more than a sign that they just couldn't get done what they wanted to get done. As a quick aside here, you can't sign and trade guys with the draft picks. So the draft pick thing is going to be separate from the sign and trades, like if they were to trade Ant or to trade Nurk with sign and trades. Because for the way sign and trades work is that Yusuf Nurkic or Anfernee Simons, the Blazers' 2 big free agents, would have to agree with the team they're going to sign there, and then the 2 teams would negotiate a trade. You can't do that until free agency starts. That's 2 full weeks after the draft, till like the moratorium begins and like the legal negotiating happens. The league, took draft picks from teams for tampering last year with sign and trades with Lonzo Ball and Kyle Lowry. You're not going to be able to trade Anfernee Simons and 7 for something. I think maybe there's like some super collusion, big brain stuff where you could draft someone at 7, not sign them to a contract, and then eventually trade that players' draft rights, a la Andrew Wiggins getting traded to the Minnesota Timberwolves back in the day for Kevin Love. But that wasn't a sign and trade. That's like, it's just like more moving parts. Those are going to be separate items. They could all happen. But if the Blazers do end up drafting at 7, I don't think that will be a sign of them hedging or building for the future. They're going to go for it with Dame. Like, they don't want a bridge to the future. Think of like the Warriors. They drafted Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody, and people thought, they're going to trade those picks. But they're just like, hey, we didn't find the trades we wanted. These 2 gentlemen would be the bridge to whatever's next. The Blazers do not have the talent on the roster to just wait and have the bridge to whatever's next. That's not what they're doing. They need to burn the bridge, get a fighter jet, and fly over all of the rest of the bridges. They need to skip a lot of steps here to get good. And you can't, not that you can't do it with rookies, but you certainly can't, like, one dude at 7 is not going to change the Blazers' outcome drastically next year. It could change their outcome in many years in the future, which is why I'm in favor of just drafting at 7, but they're going to go for it. And because Dame wants to go for it has been clear. When Damian Lillard told Chris Haynes, when he started listing off traded player exceptions interview with Chris Haynes and the TPE and the potential cap space and all this stuff, like when he mentioned to Yahoo Sports all of the Blazers tools for this summer, you better believe my man is invested in how this team's going to get good. They are not going to hedge. They are not going to hedge. They are much more likely to mortgage the future aggressively this summer and try to go for it with Dame than to do anything that looks like a halfway move. Doesn't mean that it'll work. They might wildly flop, but they're going to go for it. And the previous regime didn't go for it. And I think that Damian Lillard was frustrated with that eventually. And this group is going to go for it because, in part, if Dame's going to be here, the understanding is they're going to go for it with him. I think there are, plan A, plan B, plan C. If there's a plan D, it's all go for it. All of it. There is almost nothing they do will be a sign that they're hedging. But Rev Doctor, I know you'll hit me. If they do something that looks like hedging, ping me. We'll talk about it. I'll admit that I was wrong. All right, second segment. I got more questions for you. But first, let me tell you about Prize Picks. It's daily fantasy made easy. Prize Picks is super fun. I use the app, but you can go to prizepicks.com as well or download the app on your mobile app store. All you're doing is picking over-unders versus the projected lines set by Prize Picks. And for basketball, which is mainly what I do it with, it's points, it's rebounds, it's assists. The NBA's only got a couple games left and max 2. But, you can play the other sports. The NHL while the finals are going on, the WNBA all summer, MLB all summer, whatever it is. And again, you're just picking projected. The Prize Pick sets the line on whatever it might be. Hits, runs scored for WNBA, points, rebounds, assists, all those things. You pick A'ja Wilson over 17.5 points. You pick Derek Hamby under 7.5 rebounds. You can win some money. You pick 2 and 5 players in every entry. You can win up to 10 times. It takes about 60 seconds to make entry, and you can win some money. And if you go right now, and on your first entry, use the promo code NBA, you get $50 when a player on your team scores 1 point. So pick Jason Tatum, pick Steph Curry, pick A'ja Wilson. You're going to win some cash when you use that promo code NBA. You get $50 deposited into your account. That's Prize Picks, daily fantasy made easy. All right. Let's keep rolling on this glorious special delivery mailbag. Next question comes from All Good at Julio Can 2 on Twitter, who asks, I think every Blazer fan wants to see the defense improve. But with Damian Lillard and Anfernee Simons, a number one offense seems much closer than a middling defense. Is doubling down on offense a thing that we might see this summer? What would a number one offense look like? Who would we need? Let's just answer the first question simply. They wouldn't need much. The Blazers are probably, if Damian Lillard is healthy and Anfernee Simons is as good as he can be, the Blazers wouldn't need much to be a top 5 offense. Like, they're going to be damn close to it, I think, just because I think Dame is very good still, despite maybe some people worried that he's not good anymore. Not me. And not even really people I talk to, but certainly I think some of the perception from the larger narrative, let's call it, is like the idea that this team is like super cooked. I think Damian Lillard is still one of the 15 best players in the league. I think he's one of the best offensive players in the league. The last time he was fully healthy, he was one of the 5 best offensive forces in the league. The last time he played like a truly healthy game that we saw him play, he had 50-5 and should have had 12 or more assists in a playoff game. He's a good basketball player. I think you're really close just with him. What else would you need? You need Nasir Little to hit 37% of his threes. Bang. You're the number one offense in the league. I think it's that simple. I really do. I think they're that close. Let's talk about the other part. You cannot double down. In much the same way that they're not going to do half measures. They're not going to hedge, because that's what the previous regime did, and I think it frustrated Dame to no end. At least eventually it frustrated him to no end. I think the Olshey-Lillard thing frayed late. Hence, Olshey gone, Dame here. When Neil Olshey traded Gary Trent Jr. for Norman Powell, he leaned into the strengths. He said, we just can't find a big wing on the market. We're going to get another small guard. And Norman Powell he was kind of billed as a defensive player. That's not what he is. He's a bucket. Like, he's a bucket. Norman Powell's skill is offense. That's his strength. I guess he was on a team where weirdly he was the defensive stopper, but that's not what he is. Like, he's not that. He can be part of a good defensive team, but he's a bucket. That is Norm's strength. The Blazers had a bunch of dudes who could score on the roster and leaned into that. It gave them a first round exit. They're not going to fall into that mistake again. 1, they're just not going to repeat that. 2, Chauncey Billups will lose his dang mind. I think Billups was really frustrated with the lack of size on the roster. I know he said in his exit interviews that the team just needs better defenders. He wants to play a super aggressive style of defense, and you need better defenders to do that. And you need better defenders, quite frankly, to push towards middling with Dame and Ant on the roster. And moreover, if the Blazers want to be good and want to be serious about being good, what the hell does that look like? Well, let me tell you this. In the NBA Finals right now, you're seeing the number 1 defense in the league, the Boston Celtics, play against the number 2 defense in the league. In the conference finals in both teams that featured the 1 and 2 defense, as well as the 4th best defense in the league in the Miami Heat and the 7th best defense in the league in the Dallas Mavericks. And for good measure, defenses number 3 were Phoenix, and 6 were the Memphis Grizzlies, 2 of the other teams that made it to the second round of the Western Conference Finals. If you are serious about being good in this league, you need to be a top 10 defense. I don't think it's negotiable anymore. I think you can be fun, competitive, but if you want to be good and have a slice of the championship equity, albeit even a sliver. Like, I mean, the Mavericks really had a sliver of championship equity, and they had a really fun and rewarding season. It's because they went from one of the bad defenses in the league to a really good defense, and basically the only personnel change they made was adding Reggie Bullock. Reggie Bullock is a really good defensive player. He is never going to sniff an all-NBA, all-defense team. Like, he's just a competent defender. They had better buy-in. They had better schemes. They got more out of it. Maxi Kleber stayed healthy. They took off. You don't need to wildly overhaul. The idea was that Chauncey Billups was going to be this big defensive upgrade. When the Blazers were fully healthy or whatever, close to fully healthy at the beginning of the season, they were awful on defense immediately. And that's with better defenders like Robert Covington and Larry Nance Jr. on the roster and Norm and all of that. They need to get better, and Billups needs to get more out of them. But there is no scenario where they lean into being an elite offensive team, because leaning into being an elite offensive team is just existing with Damian Lillard and Anfernee Simons on the roster. If they're serious about competing, which they keep saying that they want to be good and that they're going to, go try to be good. And I have every reason to believe they're going to take big old swings. We are going to see they're going to be one of the most active teams this offseason. It's going to be a ton of fun. You're going to want to listen to Locked On Blazers because it's going to be a ton of fun. They need to be a competitive basketball team. The teams that are good in the West are top 10 defensive teams. The Blazers are probably a ways away from that. They've been middle of the road when Yusuf Nurkic is healthy and on the court. They need to have a shot at it. The Blazers need to be in the top 12 on defense. I don't think they can win a championship, straight up from here to where they're going to be in August. I don't think that, October when the season starts. I don't think they'll be like a championship level team, but to be a competitive team, to be a team that is like one of the teams that has a puncher's chance, like maybe not actual, like the tiniest sliver of that elusive championship equity. They need to be a top 11 defense, top 12 defense. That's the goal for them. And if they're not that, they're not a serious team. Like they're not, it doesn't matter how good the offense is. I think something like the second best offense and the ninth best defense gives the Blazers a chance to win a championship. I think the sixth best offense and the 17th best defense, which seems pretty reasonable, gives them a chance to be fun to watch again. If they're serious about it, you don't lean into your strengths, you fix what's wrong with you. All right, let's close out the show with more of your questions. A final question here on this glorious special delivery mailbag. But first, let me tell you about BetOnline, the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your sports action. More lines, more props, more odds than anywhere else. So if you want to bet on the NBA Finals, if you want to bet on the Stanley Cup Finals, you want to bet on the MLB regular season, you want to bet on the WNBA's regular season, you want to bet on MLS action, you want to bet on NWSL action, your beloved Thorns, you're going to find it all on BetOnline. Pre-game odds, in-game live betting, futures bets, whatever it is, you're going to find action. You're going to have some fun. So don't wait. Go take advantage of it today. That's BetOnline, where the game starts. Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond. You are still listening to Locked On Blazers. We are still cruising through a special delivery mailbag. Final question of the show comes from Brandon Goldner at Goldner PDX on Twitter, who asks, does Ant have superstar potential? This feels like a loaded question, Brandon, but it's a good one. I think the simple hater's answer is probably not. I think, to be clear, yeah, he like one of 90th percentile best Ant outcomes. Yeah, he's a superstar in the league. But most likely no. And in some ways, this is because superstar is hard to define. And perhaps me personally, I set the bar relatively high. How many superstars are there in the NBA right now? 8? 14? Certainly not 20. How many superstars are in the NBA Finals? 2? Was Jason Tatum a superstar in December? I think you could quibble now whether Jason Tatum is a superstar, period. To me, yes, he is a superstar. But I think he is somewhere near the line where you draw it. The number one team in the East, Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. Bam Adebayo's not a superstar. He's an incredibly helpful player, one of the best defensive players in the league. A really special basketball player. He's not a superstar. Jimmy Butler is probably somewhere right around that Jason Tatum line of yes, that's a superstar. Jimmy Butler certainly taps into it every so often, and he's a missed three-point shot away from being the best player on a team that made the NBA Finals. On the other side, Chris Paul was a superstar. I'm not sure he is anymore, and Devin Booker's not quite there yet for me. Luka Doncic is absolutely a superstar. How many of those players are in the league? Not a lot. So to say that Anfernee Simons, in my opinion, does not have superstar potential is not to say that he isn't going to be a really good player. It's to say that the bar for being that is incredibly hard to pass. CJ McCollum is going to average 20 points a game for a decade in the league. Never a superstar, in my mind. Didn't make an all-star game. Probably never will make an all-star game in the league. It's like the Blazers' 5th all-time leading scorer. A wonderful player. Truly, truly a wonderful basketball player. I feel the same way about Jason Tatum, a wonderful basketball player, but perhaps a half a tier, half a step, whatever you want to call it, below whatever the realm is for superstar. Anthony Davis probably was a superstar a couple years ago. What is he now? Like the 20th best player in the NBA? I don't think he would be considered a superstar largely and broadly across the league. Certainly a star, a famous person. He has his own Ruffles chip. So does Jason Tatum and LeBron. I only think one of those dudes is a superstar. Certainly isn't Ruffles chip is the bar. It's higher than that. Anfernee Simons' potential is to be very good. In the brief period when they turned the keys over to him, he was great. Great. Averaging close to 30 points per game on 60% true shooting. Dishing nearly 8 assists a game. Controlling and manipulating defenses. Commanding double teams. He was a borderline all-star for 6 weeks. Great. 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 Wonderful player. If he reaches that peak for an entire season, he is a borderline all-star, a special player, and someone worthy of a whole bunch of money. He'll probably, if he does that for a season, probably immediately outplay the contract he's about to sign this summer, and he might sign a $100 million contract this summer. But superstar to me is such a high bar that predicting that someone will get there seems unlikely. I think this feels like hating. Like as I'm going through this question, and I picked out this question because I wanted to share my earnest and honest thoughts about this. It feels like hating to say that. And I can feel the emails coming in. I can read those YouTube comments. I don't think it's hating to say that Anfernee Simons' peak is something like a second All-Star team. It's hard to make the All-Star team in the West. I don't think it is, say the bar for superstar is making an All-NBA team. Obviously, it has positions, so it's weird. So, like, Rudy Gobert makes it all the time, even though I don't think people would call him a superstar, even though he's probably one of the best defensive players in the history of the sport. But he's probably not a superstar. He's probably a tier below that. Same with Donovan Mitchell, probably a tier below superstar. Really good basketball players. The best two players on a team that won 60 games back-to-back seasons, or on pace for 60 because one of them was short. Even if it's All-NBA, the chance that Anfernee Simons is an All-NBA type performer at any point in his career relatively low. And even then, that would be 15 dudes in the league who would be like superstars. And I think that is just way too many folks who you could really call a superstar. Can they be a building block of a team that makes the NBA Finals on their own? Put them out there by themselves on their own. And you say, okay, if you start with Giannis, if you start with Jokic, if you start with Embiid, if you start with Luka, if you start with LeBron, although certainly the window's closing, but he's still very good. If you start with those guys, yes, you can win a title, period, because you have those guys. I think that's the bar. And I don't think Anfernee Simons, does he have potential? Yes. Like I said, something like this 90th percentile outcome. But the most likely outcome is short of that. And it doesn't mean that he's not good or not worth a bunch of money or not worth committing to long term. It just means, and I want to be clear about this, it is really hard to get really good players on your team. Jaylen Brown's an absolute stud. I don't think he's a superstar or close to it. He's just a really darn good basketball player. Draymond Green's going to make the Hall of Fame. Same with Klay Thompson. For maybe a very brief period, Klay was a superstar. Maybe. I don't think Draymond Green ever was. It's like one of the best defensive players, again, in the history of the sport. It's a high bar. It's an incredibly high bar. I don't think Ant's going to get there. Maybe that makes me a hater. It doesn't make me a doubter. I just want to be real about what the word superstar means. And I want to close with this. A listener, Nathan, shout out to the homie Nathan, sent me an email. Nathan's a regular emailer, sent me some questions about the NBA draft. He says, the Blazers should just pick a superstar, someone with superstar potential at 7. Yes. They should. They should pick someone with superstar potential at 7. What does that mean? And who has superstar potential? And if they fall to 7, how would anyone know that that player has superstar potential and 6, however many players ahead of him are not quite there? I think that word is maybe bandied about more than I am comfortable with, and maybe you set a totally different line, and I think that's fair. But to me, the chances that you draft a superstar, one of these like franchise pillar building blocks, is incredibly rare. The Blazers, again, should just take a rookie at 7 and go for it. But like, I just don't think there's that many players in the league, and the idea that you could find one in any given draft seems unlikely to me. You can draft some really darn good basketball players. The previous draft filled with a bunch of studs. The last 2 drafts have had some really fun players, really fun rookies and second-year guys in the league right now. The league's in a great spot. I would be curious how many folks you think from last year's excellent, wonderful draft class are superstars or have superstar potential. I think Scotty Barnes is an awesome player. I don't think he's going to be a superstar. I don't think Evan Mobley is going to be a superstar. Same with Josh Giddey, same with Jalen Green. I don't know. I don't know if Cade Cunningham can be, but he's probably, in my mind, the closest to it. And even then, superstar, is he going to be one of these 6, 7, 8 best players in the NBA? It's a high bar. Hit me up on Prize Picks. I'll take the under. That's going to do it for today's show. If this felt like hating in the final segment, one, comment on the YouTube channel, or if you're an audio listener, which many of you are, email me, lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com, and tell me I'm a hater. I know I am. But I'm just trying to keep it real and be honest with you. I want to be real about what my expectations are, and then you can set yours on a totally different course than mine. That is the nature of fandom. Tomorrow's show, do not miss it. Brad Rowland, host of Locked On Hawks, is going to join me, and we are going to talk about trading for John Collins. The Blazers have been rumored and connected to Hawks big man John Collins. We're going to talk all about Collins. We're going to talk about trade packages, all of that good stuff. You are not going to want to miss it. So come back for tomorrow's show. You're listening to Wednesday, June 15th show. That will be Thursday, June 16th show. Do not miss it. It is going to be a ton of fun. So join us. Make us your first listen every day. Tell your friends to do the same. If you want to get involved in a future mailbag, lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com is the best place to do it, or follow me on Twitter @MikeGRich. But again, the email address, lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com is the best place to do it. Appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.